Okay, we're back. It's COMP308, and it's week 9, lesson 9. I think it's part 3, right? And last day we talked about this service called Cloud9. It's a web-based service. Let's do this together. If you want to find where it is, you can go to Cloud9. If I put Cloud9 in my Google, it's c9.io is the actual site name that you can sign up. Now I'm already in here. And I'm not going to make it mandatory for you to use the service because, by the way, there's all kinds of online IDEs that are out there right now, right? This one seems to me to be one of the best ones that are out there. So you can definitely sign up. If you've already signed up, you can go to the dashboard. Let's take a look at pricing for a second before we do this. So we didn't do this last day. So again, if you want to use, if you want to do Cloud9, there's some various options for pricing. For example, for $9 a month, right? You have 10 gigs of disk space and a gig of RAM, right? And you have a couple of workspaces, 2 workspaces max with SSH access. So that's not really what we're about. We're using the free one, which you get 1 gig of disk space, not a lot of disk space, like 512 megs of RAM and 1 workspace maximum, right? That's really what you're getting with free. Otherwise, you're paying this $9 a month, right? There's also small, if you're into using more of it, with 4 workspaces and so on, medium and large. But the free account gives you this 1 gig space with 512 megs of RAM and so on. And this is okay. This actually goes across for Heroku and also for MongoLab. MongoLab and Heroku are not free. They have free access, right? So you can actually use it as a test. And that's what we're doing here because we're all poor students and teachers, so we don't have access to pay monthly, right? Let's take a look at Heroku for a second. Heroku, if I go into my dashboard, and this is my dashboard view, I've got a couple of apps that I've got going on Heroku right now, right? Certainly, I can choose, for Heroku, it's all free, except when you use more than 1 dyno. If I increase my dynos beyond 1, if I go edit, and I go to like a second dyno, right? It becomes $34.50 a month, right? Now, but this also improves my performance. If your client is paying, right, as an example, it's okay. And I can continue to increase my dynos, $70 a month, $100 a month, $178 a month. I'm going to keep going, right? Until you have all kinds of money a month, 38 dynos. The more dynos you use is like more power for your application, more server resources, right? Which is kind of a neat model for Heroku. By the way, Microsoft works very similar to this from an Azure perspective. We'll talk about Azure, and again, in a couple weeks when the Microsoft representative comes in. So that's what Heroku does, right? Let's do MongoLab. If I go MongoLab will take me to the same thing. It'll take me to my dashboard. I'm going to log in here. Of course, it forgot me. I'm going to log in here. Of course, I forgot my login. But that's okay. Yeah, usually it's my email, but it could be just my username, like just this alone. I usually just use the same username and password all the time, like for these little sites, because I don't really care for that. Right here I am. So if you notice, I've got one MongoDB website. One MongoDB, it's a sandbox. I've got one single one. And if I go in here, right, here's my details for it. And again, if you notice, right now I got one it's worth 16 megs. That's all it is, right? So it's not really big, right? And I can see what's in here, and I can see how many users and how many flights. If I want to kill this thing, I can delete the database. Here's my confirmation for deletion. I can also talk about my users. I can create my users. I can kill these guys too, or I can delete the whole database, which is what I'm going to do, right? We'll talk MongoDB next week, so you'll get kind of an idea of what we're doing here, right? And if I go to plans and pricing again, right? Again, a sandbox, you get 500 megs for free, right? For MongoLab, which is plenty for us. My 500 megs of JSON file is like huge. It's like, you got lots of room. Shared, up to 8 gigs. For small databases and light workloads, $15 per gigabyte, right? So it's per gigabyte billing. And dedicated, so unlimited scaling and so on, is $180 and up, and it really depends on how much RAM and the same kind of thing as Heroku. Okay? And there's other pricing here as well. I'm not going to go into. By the way, if you notice, look what it says here, Microsoft Azure. If you click on Azure, right, and depend on how many, the type of scaling that you have for RAM and storage, there's also a price where you can connect to Azure. Now, there's also free, this is a dedicated cluster plan. This is a dedicated single node plan, and so on. And of course, there's just non-dedicated plans that we're using, so that way you're sharing stuff with others. And this is what we're doing with our sandbox. Okay? So again, we're doing free pricing. I don't expect you guys to pay anything. So all these services that I'm showing you right now, they have pricing attached to them. They're not free, but they offer free services for us that we can use. And this is great for us from a learning perspective because we want to learn some of these things. Same thing with GitHub. GitHub is not free, right? It gives you free access, but if you want to make a private repo, you have to pay, right? Or you have to be a student. And same thing with Bitbucket, right? Bitbucket, some of the things you can do in Bitbucket are paid for as well. But Bitbucket does offer you, as an alternative to GitHub, let's look at Bitbucket 1 second from a tools perspective. Here's my Bitbucket account, right? Bitbucket is like GitHub, but it does offer you free repositories, free private repositories, right? So this is another option for you guys. I'm not going to really talk too much about Bitbucket because this is yet another tool for you guys. I don't want to talk too many new tools. But the main one we're going to be using today when we do stuff with Angular is going to be Cloud9. So I'm going to go to Cloud9 again. I recommend you sign in and get an account. But if you don't want to, I'm not going to force you. So let's go back in here into my dashboard. And if you notice, I should have only one workspace that I'm working in at a time. I can't work in more than one workspace. I've got this Starbase 12 that I've launched. Right, here's a workspace. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it because I don't need the workspace anymore. I've already done everything I need to do with Starbase 12. Right? So I'm going to say delete. Okay, so I don't want that workspace. But I do have this Express demo we were working on yesterday, if you remember. And when I start editing, here's I'm going to start editing my workspace. It gives me a full-blown IDE that I can work with, right? And if you notice, there's a bunch of things. I've got my file list on the left-hand side, right? As an example, I've got a couple of windows here on the bottom, right? Again, it doesn't matter whether I'm working on Mac or Windows machines. I've got my Bash, and it kind of, launches it from where I left off because it's like a virtual machine, yeah? If I go clear on this window here, right? Here is where I'm clearing, and here's my Java window where I can do some immediate Java commands, as well as my runner, which is running right now. So if you go to this website, which is expressdemo my last name .c9.io/about, you'll see this website, right? And I also put it up on Heroku yesterday. So if you look at Heroku for a second, so look at that side. Here's my Express demo that I put up on Heroku, right? And if I want to launch this thing, it takes me to my, what it looks like. It's COMP308 expressdemo.herokuapp.com. Okay, that's the actual site. This is what we were doing yesterday with Express. Now, if you want to look at where I got my files, if you want to follow up with me, if you guys weren't here yesterday, and you want to follow up to kind of connect with me, you can find the files yesterday that we worked on GitHub, right? And again, if I go to my repositories and I look at COMP308, then you'll see that yesterday, if I go lesson, or did we make it Express? But I think we called it Express demo. Here it is, Express demo yesterday is what we looked at. And this is where all my files are. And by the way, these files here, right, are the same files we have on Cloud9 as the same files that we have up on Heroku. They're all the same files. Each service kind of connects with the other one. And I also mentioned yesterday that if you want to, eventually we want to connect MongoLab up to Heroku. And the only way to do that is to have, you don't have to pay anything, but you do have to enter a credit card, right? So one day we will go to this point where we try this out. We have MongoLab and Heroku running at the same time. I'm going to make it optional, right? I'm not going to make you do a credit card. They're not going to take anything from your credit card anyway, right? It's not for that. They just want to ensure who you are. They don't want a random person creating a link with MongoLab, because MongoLab actually has services that they build back to Heroku. That's how it works, right? So you can actually, instead of choosing a free sandbox, you can choose other services through your MongoLab account, right? And that's why they kind of work in tandem with each other. Okay, so again, just a kind of a preview or a review of what we did yesterday a little bit. I wanted to go over that with you because if we don't, then we have issues. Okay, so yesterday we created this Espresso, I call it this Expresso site, right? It's an Express demo that we kind of put together, right? And we used different views and partials, if we remember where we left off, right? So if I look at, we use the EJS template engine, right? That's what we're using, and we're running it in Node, right? So if we look at index.js, if I double click on that, and there's a bunch of little tabs I've got going on here, right? You notice that I'm just going to shut down some of these other ones just to make it easier for us to see everything, just for a second. Then I'm going to launch the ones I want, right? Here's my proc file. So index.ejs, EJS, this ending, just to remind you guys from last week and yesterday, EJS is the template engine that we're using, right? And all we're doing is, it looks almost identical to hypertext markup language, HTML, except for these extra commands here, where we actually use the include method, right, to include different partials. Here are our partials, right, into our code. So here's my HTML page. I've created one template, right, and in my template, it's my main template, and I'm reusing it for both the about page and the home page. My routing for the template happens underneath my routes. Here's my routes. And if you notice, I've defined two routes with this router.get method, right? I've created an index. I'm using an index page. And when I go to this backslash or forward slash, it means that this is the main site. It's going to hit my index page, my index template. And I'm going to send in there a couple of variables, my title variable and my headline variable, right? But what if I wanted to create another template really quickly with EJS before we go into Angular? So how do I create another template? And this is where Lilia is going to be happy, because then you don't have to create the same, you don't have to use the same template. Right now I'm using one template for everything. But let's say I want to make a contact page. Contact page looks different, right, than the other templates do. Right, let's try that out. So first, we're going to make it so that our views, I'm going to right click and go new file, right on the view side. And instead of index, we're going to call this the contact page. So contact.ejs. Now our contact.ejs page by default is empty, right? Because we haven't made this template yet, right? Remember, anything in the partials folder is all partials that we're going to use, and anything inside our outside of it, inside our views, are our templates that we're going to be using, right? Okay, and we have to link to the template too in a second. So a couple things we need. We need some of the same things we have in our index template. We need some of this piece. So we need some of this as an example. Actually, let's just copy the whole thing for a second, and I'm going to go back into my contact page. I'm going to put this in here. Okay, cool. Well, these are all the same because it's just different pages. This is my contact layout, and I know I have a header, a content section, and a footer. Well, you know what? My content section I want to swap out for maybe some kind of like contact, a contact content. Like, for example, a form. All right? I don't have a form yet, right? So let's make one. So I'm going to kind of take this one out of my template. And I want to create another partial. So I'm going to go into partials. I'm going to go new file. And my new file is going to be called like a form, almost like an email form. Right? .ejs. So let's think about what things do I need to include in my email form. First of all, that's what I'm going to include here in this template here. I'm going to copy and paste. And instead of, copy and paste here. And instead of my including a header and just a footer, I'm also going to include this email form partial, right? Because that's what I want in there, my email form. Well, I haven't defined my email form, so let's do that now. So I'm going to go email form. And remember how forms work. You need a form, some kind of form, right? So let's do a form. And inside my form, I need some kind of input, right? an input field. If you don't remember how to do a form because you've forgotten, right? And if you want to do HTML5 form, right? You can always go and do, let's go example. Here, let's make it easy, right? You can always go and grab stuff, right? From, here's forms complete example, right? And this is what it would look like. I want some of this in my form, right? I don't know how to make it, let's just say, right? So I'm going to go into input types and I'm going to start looking at some basic forms. Here's a form, and this is just for illustration purposes. So let's just grab this information here. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to go back to my Cloud9 and just replace that with this. Okay, so I got my first name. I think I'm missing something, but let's just put it like this. And I got a couple of breaks, line breaks that I'm putting in here. Very simple form. And last name. And you know what? We can use the HTML5 required or require, right? I want to require both these things for my forms. And I don't have a button. I could put a button in here too, because HTML5 allows me to do that. Right, so let's just put in a button. And my button, of course, is going to have a an ID as an example of submit button. And I can have JavaScript kind of interact with this thing to create my form. Okay, so this is my form element, and this is my partial. That's all I'm doing for my partial. Now you can make it as complex and nice as you want, and I recommend that, right? Especially when you're going to do you're going to transfer the stuff, the new assignment that you're going to have. I'm going to give it to you today, right? You're going to transfer the stuff. You're going to convert your portfolio site, right, from what you have right now, regular HTML5 and CSS and JavaScript. You're going to convert it to use ExpressJS. Okay, that's your next assignment, right? ExpressJS, you're going to make partials, you're going to do some routing, and you're going to put it up on Node, right? I want you also to host it on Heroku, right? So this is the pieces that I'm going to put together for you, and you'll have your assignment details later today. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing. So I've got this form element, and now I want to add it in, right? So I've got my form, and I've got my contact template. Here's where it pulls in the form, right? Right here. I got my header, my footer, and my form. This is all good. But now I got to create a new root. So if I go back to index.js, I have these two roots. I want to create one more. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go down here, right? Yep. And that's not what I wanted. I'm going to copy this, Control as Command, I'm on a Mac, right? And now I'm going to get my contact page, right? So I'm going to say when the user goes contact, and by the way, we don't have any navigation, so to speak, right now. So it's only when the user enters contact or when my navigation takes me to the contact page, right? Then I don't want to use my index anymore. That's my template right here. I want to use my contact template. So I'm going to put contact in here, right? And then I don't want to say my title isn't going to be about me anymore because this can be similar. I can make this so it says contact me. My first headline, I don't want to pass a first headline if I don't want to. But for now, let's say, maybe something like please enter your info, right? So please enter your info. This is the first headline, a contact me page. And by the way, you can break down your content partial, so there's more. There's more than just that, one big meaty piece, right? Okay, this is cool, but hey, I don't have this first headline. I don't have a title, right? Because if you remember, my email form doesn't have a title and a headline. My content, which is here, has all that stuff, right? And it also is kind of surrounded by this container class for Bootstrap, because we've included the Bootstrap framework here, right? So I want to add some of this to my contact form, right? So what do? I could include this in addition to my contact form info. I could do that. Or I could customize it and add some pieces of this into my contact form info. It's up to me. So let's say I want to do some of this. So I'm going to take this whole thing, Control C, and I'm going to go back into my email form. And inside, on top of this, this is my content. Up here, I can put it up here if I want. Here's my div. I want to take my div tag out of here and put it at the bottom. And I'm just going to kind of tab in, so this is kind of on the same line, so it makes it look, there's my form, and here's my first headline, and here's my welcome. Instead of welcome to, I'm just going to put in my title, please enter the information, right? And I'll take out the rest of this stuff. I don't need my subheading and all this stuff here, right? So you can see I'm making my own content, right, for my partial. So my partial, which is called email form, is just going to include the stuff that I need for my email form, right? And it's going to be different, right, than my content. Okay, cool. I've got my route, but because I changed my routes and added my server, I changed my server, I got to stop my server and rerun it in order for my form to take effect. Here, I'm going to stop and rerun it, and if everything goes well, I don't have any errors, right, I'm good to go. Now I'm listening, and if I want to change, I want to check and see what it looks like live, I'm going to refresh my page. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to put in here contact to test my form out locally, and I should be able to get my contact. Okay, cool. This is what I wanted, right? So it says error not found. App use render message home Ubuntu workspace app.js. I went into my app.js and it's trying to find a link for my router, right? As an example, but I don't have a router. I don't have a direction from my new default. Which is going to be I haven't created a template definition for my contact page, right? Because my contact EJS page doesn't know about it here, right? So that's why I'm having an issue. If I refresh, right? Let me just check just to confirm, let me go into my routes. So again, it's in my routes, in my index.js, and did I even save this thing? Make sure I save everything, because sometimes if I don't save, right, this is a bad thing. So let me just do that. I'm going to stop my server and rerun it. If I don't do that, sometimes if I forget to save, then all these changes didn't go through, right? Cool, let me refresh. And now I've got my contact form. Right, now if you notice, my contact form has a different format. It still has my header and my footer, right? Here's my copyright statement. And again, it's very badly formatted. I haven't added in any additional CSS, right? But if you notice, welcome to contact me. That's kind of weird. I don't want to say that. I want to change that up. Please enter your info. These are all things that I want you to put in. Here's some first, and then where's my button? All my buttons here, because I didn't put in a button. I didn't put in any kind of, I didn't put any words in for my button, right? So let me go back into my partial for my email form, right? And my button has to say like submit, right? Something like that. And also, I don't have any kind of styling for my button. So for now, I'm just going to add in some really bad styling and put in almost like a break, a line break, take me to the next line. Obviously, I want to do this with CSS. I haven't touched CSS yet, right? But I want to do that. I don't have to rerun it anymore because I'm not changing my server. My routing is still the same. I'm not saying it, hey, reroute to over here. If I change my routing or anything like that, that's when I have to rerun my server. Otherwise, I don't need to do that. I only need to rerun my server when I'm changing something on the server side, when I'm redoing something with Node. I'm adding some other kind of functionality, right? This is just HTML, right? So I can change all my HTML to my heart's content in here, right? Okay, cool. So that means that if I go back here and refresh, then my button is going to be down here, right? Now my button doesn't do anything. It kind of flashes right now, right? Because it doesn't do anything. It takes me back to its own page because I don't have a submit button. There's nothing that my submit button does. I don't have a form. When I have my submit button, my post, it doesn't go post or do anything. It doesn't send anything anywhere. So this form isn't working right now. Okay, let's see if we can get this onto Heroku. Remember how to do this? Let's do this one more time because we need to do this a couple times for you to see this. Okay, so here I'm up on Cloud 9 and I'm going into my bash script, right? And I'm going to say, I made a couple changes. So I'm going to say git add dot, which means I'm added all my changes to my GitHub, right? Or my local repository. And then I'm going to make git commit -m for message. And it's going to be, here's my commit. I added contact me partial and a new root. So I can put whatever I want here, right? Enter. Okay? I did that. If I want to do git log shows me all the different, if I scroll up here, these are all the different commits that I've made for my project right now, right? Quit, for Q for quit. And then if I want to look at git status, right? My git status says, hey, my branch is your branch is ahead of origin master by 1 commit, I need to git push to publish your local commits to GitHub. So I'm going to go git push origin master, and now all my changes are on GitHub. Right? So if you follow me on GitHub, you'll see my changes up there on the Express demo repository. Okay, now I want to push this to Heroku. If you remember how to do this, I go git push Heroku, because I set this up last day, master. And now I push all this to Heroku, right? So I got to push this to my live site. Remember, the stuff I'm doing with my my development site here with Cloud9 or your own local development environment, right? If you don't have access to the internet, that's one disadvantage, by the way. Can't use Cloud9 if you're on a plane, right? Can't use Cloud9 if you're on a train, right? Won't work. You can only use Cloud9 when you're live. When you're actually, you have to have a persistent internet connection. That's a bad thing for an IDE, right? But that's okay. Most of us are live all the time nowadays, unless you're flying or something like that. Okay, cool. So I deployed it on Heroku, right? And let's check out my Heroku website now, right? So I'm going to refresh this page to make sure that we're good. I still got only one dyno. And you know what? I'm going to check out my Express demo. Here it is. And if I go to my, I don't have any navigation, but if I go to my contact page, right, then it takes me to contact me now. Okay? So again, I've got 2 templates that I'm using. One template that handles my home page and my about page, and another template that handles contact, and they're totally different, right? So you can make as many templates, and this is where we come up with this whole idea of model view controller, right? Going back to the whole AngularJS, it's a good segue into talking about AngularJS. How then, and I'm asking you this question from a high-level perspective, I want to make a single-page app, right? In effect, I am making a single-page app, right? I'm not really loading multiple pages here. I'm making I can make a mini spa, if you will. I can use one page, right? And I can use, instead of routing the way I'm doing with EJS, right, and Express, I don't have to use the routing engine of Express. I'm using it now, and that's my option. But remember, Angular can be added in to any website as a front end, right? So if I add in ng app to my header, guess what? Every header of every page has ng app added into it, okay? So that's good. That means my Angular is part of all the pages, right? And I can share controllers across pages. Each page can have the same controller. As long as I put that ng app directive on the top, I've got the same set of controllers and functions available to me. Okay, cool. And again, I'm certain now that you guys have done the the quiz that you know what I'm talking about, right? I don't have to re-explain what ng app is, but we're going to do this. We're going to run through the PowerPoint presentation for those people anyway, right? In a second. Okay, cool. So this part I wanted you to get. I wanted you to understand how to do this Express. Anyone not understand what I just did? Right? It's okay if you put up your hand. I can re-explain it. Again, I have 3 things I'm doing. I've got my Cloud9 services running. In my Cloud9, I'm running Node, right? It's got a little server built in to Cloud9 in here, right? And if I want to run this on Heroku, which is a cloud service provider, right, for us, I can just push it to Heroku by using Git, because Git is our main repository engine, if you will, right, or our source control system, right? And both GitHub, actually all GitHub, Bitbucket, and Heroku, all 3 locations, they use Git as a source control engine, right, our source control system. So do we now here in our local systems, right? So my local repository, all I'm doing is I can push it anywhere I want. I can push it to any remote I define. And I've defined 2 remotes. One remote, which is GitHub, and another remote, which is Heroku right now. So I can push my repository, all my changes, to each of the remotes. I can even push them separately. The good practice to do is update GitHub first, and after you're done doing your updates, then push to Heroku, right? So you've already done your updates on GitHub. So you're up to date in terms of source control. But how about if you're someone who doesn't want to work with this whole thing, with Cloud9 and stuff like that? You want to do it locally, right? Or maybe you're on a plane or a train and you want to work. Well, like I said, the tools I'm going to be using here in this course for the rest of the remainder of the course is brackets, right? Most likely. We're also going to talk about not just brackets, but Visual Studio and how to use Visual Studio with Node, because there is a way of using Visual Studio with Node, but it's a little bit more cumbersome, I have to admit, right? We're going to talk about that as well, but that will be a topic for another day. So let's take a look. I want to go into my, remember I talked about this, I'm on my Windows machine here, and I need to use Git shell if I want to have all my functionality. So I launched Git shell on my Windows machine, and now I want to kind of bring my local repository up to date with what's happened on Heroku and Cloud9. How do I do that? Well, I just do this. I say I kind of have to go into my folder. So I'm going to go into my desktop, and I got to go into the folder that has Express Demo, right? And inside my Express Demo, I have this little thing, because I'm using Git shell, that shows that my master is up to date here locally, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this, git pull origin. And what this is going to do is going to connect with GitHub and pull down all the changes that I made, right, from my GitHub here locally. And now that I've done this, if I do an ls command, again, I'm using git shell, right, I can see that I've got the same kind of things. And if I want to run my stuff locally, I can just do the same thing. I can say npm start. I can try that command. And if it doesn't work, you know, as an example, npm start doesn't work, I can also do node /bin /www, which if I'm running properly, it says cannot find module express. This is good, right? Because if I go into node modules, I've got a couple things. I've downloaded my packages, right? I've done this on the Cloud9, but I don't have any packages here. So I need to do this, npm install, right? And what npm install is going to do is going to look through my package.json file and find all of my dependencies and download them and install them into a node modules folder. So if I go ls, I now have a node modules folder. So I have my complete package, right? And now I'm going to do node /bin /www, which is how I start my server. So my server started, and if I go locally here into port 3000, I believe, right? Here's my localhost port 3000. I get my Express demo here locally. So I'm running Node locally now. And if I go to the same kind of routing, so if I go /contact, right, then I should get my contact page. Right? So I've done it both all places now, locally, on Cloud9, and on Heroku. These are all different testing environments. Your local environment you'd use if you're in isolation. If you don't have access to things like, you know, the cloud somehow, right? If you're running with the cloud, though, there's nothing wrong with using a service like Cloud9, right? And you're deploying live on a place like Heroku. And by the way, you can also deploy live on your GitHub pages. There's another place you can deploy live. The only thing with GitHub pages is, do they support Node? That's the question, right? They won't run Node for you. So if you're running a Node server, specific type of server, GitHub won't support that right now, right? Heroku will. And we're always trying to go with Node. If you're just running regular websites, GitHub pages are the way to go, right? Wikis and GitHub pages are good. But if you're running a Node server, you need some place that supports Node. And Heroku is one of these places. By the way, you can also use Amazon services. I'm not going to shy away from that as well. And you can also use Google services, Google Web Services, right? Both services are available, and they both support Node nicely, right? And not next week, but the week after, when the Microsoft representative, I sent you guys a note yesterday, Adarsha comes, right? He's going to be talking about Azure and how we can connect to Azure, right? So again, I kind of mentioned in my note, if you guys didn't see the note or haven't read it, right? There's going to be food, right? Which usually attracts you guys to come. Yeah, I know. It might be food and other giveaways, right? I know it's Microsoft, so they have what they call swag to give away, right? To you guys. So I don't know what it is, maybe pens or badges or I don't know, a hat or something weird like that. Maybe a monocle. I don't know, something they're going to give you from Microsoft, right? But at the end of the day, I think it's worth your while to attend. Here's the really cool part. Our class, our section is the only one that's going to get that treatment right now. The other sections don't get that treatment. Just happens. I was lucky. It wasn't because I'm special. I'm just lucky, right? Because the time. Now we're going to try and arrange for the other classes to get the same thing, or for Adarsha to, capture his presentation, because he's going to do a presentation on Azure and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's a good. I think you should plan to be there that day. So it's March 25th. Please don't run out of the country or anything like that if you're on. If you're going to take a March break for whatever reason, in addition to your reading week, that would not be the week to do it, because it's part of one of our objectives for this course, to hit the objectives, to talk about cloud, right? And it might help you with your final project. So please, I would ask you, be here for that day, March 25th, 10:30. It's only 2 hours. Can be in this classroom, and Adarsha Datta from Microsoft. He's a Microsoft technical evangelist or technology evangelist, is going to be here to talk about cloud services and Azure. Okay? Any questions around what I've talked about so far? Kind of a review from yesterday, but I want to talk about it one more time, because then we're going to go into Angular, and then once I start talking Angular and Express, because we're building that mean stack, we've done, we haven't touched Mongo yet, right? We've talked Express, we've talked Node, and now we're going to talk Angular. Yeah. The which one? Node.js, the lecture? Okay, I'll put the PowerPoint up today as well. And I'm also going to include Express. Express and Node are going to be up there. That'll be up later on today. And but one thing we've talked about 2 of the 4 pieces, Express and Node, and you need to know those 2 pieces in order for you to do the full mean stack. Again, today we're going to talk, the rest of this course is going to be Angular. We're going to talk a little bit about Angular next week and Mongo. And by hopefully by next week, we've had the whole mean stack in place. We've talked Mongo, Angular, Express, and we've also got it live on MongoLab, which is where I want to go. Okay? So I'll stop this for now.